Welcome back, or welcome front if it's the first time joining us. This is the Adventure Game Hotspot podcast. As always, I'm Joshua and Jack. How the heck are you, dude?
I'm great, but man, I'm just busy. I mean, I'd forgotten how busy the adventure genre kept
Mm-hmm.
me. Day in, day out. I keep thinking there's going to be a limit, a lull, and nope, the next day it's yet another three new games I've never heard of before, and two that have come out, and two more reviews landing on my desk, kind of thing. So I'm busy.
So, in the almost 19 years that you've been doing this, would you say that this is a new trend, or is it kind of going back towards like the olden days?
Oh no. No. This is way, 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 way busier than it's ever been, and it's been kind of gradually increasing,
Mm-hmm.
sort of the last few years. Well, the last decade plus. When I first started doing year-end awards,
Mm-hmm.
like 12 years ago or so, I think we had something like 75 games at the end of the year, and now we're pushing over 200. So there are a lot.
And I imagine it's because there's more opportunities for indie devs,
Yeah,
correct? Mm-hmm.
absolutely. I mean, the genre is indie devs now.
Mm-hmm.
The uh, for adventure games anyway. The AAA games are all but gone. Even the AA studios are pretty much gone.
Mm-hmm.
The Daedalus and stuff like that. But you know what? I can't rave enough about the quality of work that these quote unquote indie devs are producing these days. Like you would never guess.
Well, I've been kind of watching your announcements. Every single day, it seems like you're putting out one or two new game announcements, and I'm shocked at when I look at the resume of some of these developers, I'm like, whoa, this is their first game. Like, what's going on here? Or this is this is a brand new studio. There's some good stuff out there.
Oh, it's amazing. Our reviews too. Just this past week, we reviewed two games,
Mm-hmm.
Perfect Tides and Voodoo Detective, both from first-time
Yeah.
developers, and they both crushed it. Particularly Perfect Tides was sort of a turn of the millennium teen drama that was just written so impeccably that our reviewer couldn't stop raving about it. And Voodoo Detective, a gorgeous looking game
Gorgeous.
that,
Yeah. And
would fit right in with the classics and lots of comedy and exotic locations and stuff like that. It's just amazing from first time developers. Like I don't know if you remember know of him, Yahtzee. He's a former game developer and does a lot of podcasts and stuff like that too.
hmm.
He once said something to the effect of, a developer should never release their first game. Because that's how it used to be. Like,
Mm-hmm.
get all your mistakes out of the way. Don't, do a big production the first time. Just learn your ropes small and out of the spotlight, and then you'll be ready for the big time. But you know, these new developers these days, man, they're just hitting the ground running.
Well, I played Voodoo Detective when it
Oh,
came
did you?
out, and I had no idea that was their first game until I read that in the review. Or, yeah, that's what I read in the review. It shocked me, or maybe you told me that or something. But I was like, I couldn't believe it because that is a polished game. It's
Yeah,
beautiful. It's a beautiful game, and it's well written. And
yeah,
so there's actually a
yeah. I mean,
lot of.
we're used to sort of the small,
Mhm.
sort of 2 hour pixel art game, low res kind of thing, which is fine. There are a lot of great games done that way. But no, just because something is, indie, doesn't mean it's sort of a lesser production quality anymore. So
Foolish Morals is one that I'm particularly excited about. That
yeah.
is that you want to talk about good looking game. Now,
Oh,
obviously, I
no.
don't. I haven't played the demo. I know there's a demo out and everything, but it sure looks good. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Again, you'd never guess. Yeah, first game.
congratulations to them and on their successful Kickstarter campaign that just
It
ended. And it,
literally ended just like 5 minutes ago or
right,
so.
yeah, and it hit every tier.
Oh yeah,
And blew it out of the way, blew it
yeah.
out of the waters. So, Why don't you kind of give us a rundown of some of these new game announcements that you've been every day, every day? Jack, how you doing? I'm I'm in the middle of all these new game announcements. Not that you're like upset over it, but you're overwhelmed, and
Yeah,
you're
no,
putting out
it's
good
it's
quality.
great news for gamers,
Right.
less great for me because I want to be able to do a write up for them all, and
Mm-hmm.
I keep sort of making notes and copying everything down and downloading trailers and stuff, but I just seem to keep falling farther and farther behind. But yeah, there's been some neat stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get to a sort of a new one,
Uh-huh.
I should mention the big news from Cyan this week, which is that they're doing a Riven remake.
Can you imagine that? You mean Cyan's gonna do another Myst type game, a remake of another Myst type game? What is it, like the
Uh,
10th time?
yeah, I'm glad it's not missed itself since
Right,
they've done that about 6 or 7 times.
right.
But yeah, it's time they turn their sights on Riven. That's going to be pretty impressive.
I clicked on that expecting to see it. It's just an announcement, literally an announcement. It's this is the logo type of thing, but
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
and
Oh,
I'll
that's all
buy
you
it.
need. Oh, yeah, exactly.
I'll buy it. I've bought every single version since they've
Yeah,
come out
yeah,
with
me
everything.
too with Mist. Yeah, so, and I'm not good at those games, but
Mhm.
I can't resist. And then they keep getting better and better looking, and it's pretty impressive. So that's kind of the big news for the week. But yeah, for other announcements, there's a new game called Deep Sleep Labyrinth of Fear by Script Welder, who is reviving sort of a decade old Flash trilogy that he did with a sort of full length commercial game. There's another amazing looking game called The Graveyard Union,
Mm-hmm.
which is sort of a cartoony comic look with a serious kind of story. That's crowdfunding on Indiegogo. I I haven't really seen a lot of games with successful
Indiegogo.
crowdfunders there, but I really hope it does well because it looks really impressive.
If I may have
Um,
a moment to
for
talk about that, just like my observations as well, I think that needs some emphasis. It looks really cool. I haven't seen a game like that before.
Yeah,
You got some zombies. You got some like basically all these dead or undead characters that are working inside an office. What a super cool premise! I loved it.
yeah, the monsters aren't the bad guys in the
Uh,
Graveyard Union. They're in
yeah.
fact they're the oppressed ones. So in fact, they've been so exploited by the movie industry that they've had to unionize, and hence the Graveyard Union. So yeah, it looks like
Brilliant.
a lot of fun. So I really hope it does well. There's something for Laura Bow fans out there. Um, Sort of a low res EGA style game called Signal and Echo. Iris is Missing, which has got a demo on Steam. That looks like a lot of fun, and a kind of combination of point and click and some unique uses of the text parsers. So, and I guess the other one is Between Horizons. If you liked the game Lacuna from I think it was last year or maybe the year before, those developers are coming out with a brand new sci-fi game. So looks pretty slick.
What about
And
the
that's not all, but that's like we could fill up our entire podcast talking about the rest of them. So
what about the one that you just put out today, talking about deep sleep? That caught my eye.
yeah, well, as I said, it's a sequel to an old Flash
Oh,
trilogy
that's the
that
one that
was
you were mentioning. Sorry, I was.
yeah, yeah,
I guess I should
it's
pay
okay.
attention to you rather
Yeah,
than
yeah. When I'm
read while you're
talking,
talking. Oh
you won't
man.
be the first person to tune me out. So,
Well, I
but
won't do
that's
it again today. I hope.
yeah, sure. Yeah, I see your fingers crossed there.
Not my fingers. Not my fingers. So that's kind of a nice little, preface, a prelude into what we're going to be talking about today. The meat of what we're talking about today is what makes an adventure game good. And I think we're going to take this in two separate perspectives. I'm going to kind of give an example of what I personally think what makes an adventure game good to me. and then give examples of what it was in a game. And you're gonna dive a little bit deeper because you're more articulate than me.
Well, I don't know if that's why, but you got to cover them both. You do the meat and potatoes, and I'll do some of the trimmings because you don't get a good game if all the elements don't come together, right? So why don't you start us off?
Well, I hate to take low hanging fruit, but obviously the story for me, and if you anybody who's followed my show, my weird gaming adventure channel or anything like that, you know that story is everything to me. You don't have to have good graphics, you don't have to have all the good stuff if you can captivate me in a story. And I think the biggest thing is right off the bat of a game, I have to have a reason to go on this adventure. I want to, I basically, I want to have a call to action. I don't want to just kind of figure out why I'm going about this game while I'm going about this game. I want to have something that has happened to me, something dramatic, something that makes me want to go and put myself out there on an adventure. Speaking of examples of what not to do, is uh, beneath this, not beneath this, beyond. What's the new one?
Beyond the Steel Sky.
Beyond the Still Sky. Did you play that one?
You know what? I played about a third of it, and then just it got lost in the shuffle.
That was one of those games that there was no emotional context for me. I loved the first one. Right
Yeah.
from the beginning, there was like a form of genocide. Their whole, all of your adopted family members. You've been kidnapped. You want to go and you want to get the guys back. In this, it shows a couple minutes of him like kind of fishing with a kid, and some monster type thing comes out and gobbles up the kid. And then okay, now I gotta like go on this crazy adventure again because you don't even know if you like the kid. You're just fishing with the kid. So I believe that that's something that I need to be stroked. I need that fire to be burning right from the beginning. And I want something to keep me going. I want there to be something that doesn't have to necessarily be an entertaining story, but I still want to be captivated by it. History captivates me. Places that I've been where you can have a good story, or that I've not been that you can have a good story. Types of. I'll always go to the thing that I love about Broken Sword. Right from the beginning, you have an explosion. You have something that like, I'm pissed off. There's a clown. I don't like clowns. Let's go chase this clown type of thing. But throughout the entire game, you have locations that are mysterious to me. Locations that I would love to be rather than just sitting at my desk. You have the Templars, which is a source of history that is very interesting. And they rolled that into a perfect story, in my opinion. What's your thoughts on the story?
Well, I hope I was poker faced enough to not give away anytime you touched on some of the points I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to cover later. But,
Okay.
because, yeah, story is, well, okay, we should preface this by saying this doesn't apply to all games. We just mentioned Mist and Riven. There are games where they deliberately don't put story front and center, and there are merits to those too.
Mm-hmm.
But in a story centric game, it's so important to get right. If it's kind of like like a good movie or a good book or something. If it doesn't grab your attention and hold it, then it's gonna lose it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's especially hard with an adventure game because it's not a linear thing. Pacing is a problem with adventure games because you're working on puzzles, and it's so easy to kind of lose the strain of a story. So it's a real balancing act to give players enough to do, to have some control, but also to keep the story flowing and going. So yeah, it's really 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 hard to do well. And so yeah, when a game does, like, say any of the Gabriel Knight games, let's say, yeah, or Broken Sword, as you
Mhm.
say, they're always going to be right up there on people's top 10 lists.
So where would you put story in your emphasis in having a good adventure game?
Well, okay. We've talked before about I kind of believe there are three central pillars
Mhm.
for adventure games. I'm probably going to step on some of your
No, 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 no.
points
This
from
is a
later, but
discussion. Uh huh.
yeah, story, puzzles, and
Hmm.
exploration.
Hmm.
And I would say, yeah, story has to be number one. Um, Again, assuming it's not sort of a puzzle centric game where story is deliberately left in the background.
Right.
Without a good story, it's just not going to hold you.
Okay.
Everything else flows out of that.
I think another thing that will help me continue my adventure is the ambiance in a game. So I'm trying to find one that's not necessarily the low hanging fruit that I'm talking about. I want something that
So you
is.
just jumped the queue, man. You took my turn.
Oh, it. Oh,
So
sorry.
you
I
just
thought you were gonna go in the more detailed stuff.
you just gonna keep going until I stop you? Well, this is me stopping you.
Well, let me just say ambiance. Like, were you
Okay.
gonna say ambiance?
I wasn't, but that's kind of getting closer to some of my
So
points.
why don't you jump in there, and then I will kind of say my thoughts when it comes to that. Mm.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of overlap
Mm-hmm.
with different points.
Uh huh.
Like we can't separate story from puzzles from exploration is part of puzzles, stuff like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my first one is sort of an all-encompassing, unique vision. A good game has to have a unique vision. Something that makes it unlike any other game. And that could be anything. It could be an art style,
Mm-hmm.
it could be the story, it could be the main character, it could be a certain style of gameplay, say like Jonathan Blow's The Witness kind of thing. It, you know, the unique vision for any game is whatever the developer imagines it to be, but it should be the one rock solid thing that holds everything together. Um, like it, and I'm not suggesting that every game has to be reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Every game has to be innovative. Not at all. You can you know use sort of borrowed used elements, like, but find something in that to really make it your own. um, it's okay not to be innovative, but you can't just be derivative and lazy. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? You have to find something to make it uniquely yours.
So
If
what's
you're
a good
doing,
example?
well, I mean, if you're doing, say, a 1920s detective mystery or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. Detective mysteries are a dime a dozen, but okay, so let's say you want to put it in the 1920s. Let's say that's your,
Mm-hmm.
specific vision. Then lean into that. Do the research. Learn the costumes and the settings and the lingo and the mannerisms and stuff that really grounds it in the 1920s and makes it something that doesn't feel like the other 865 uh, mystery detective mysteries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of thing. um, like art style, let's say
Mm-hmm.
there's one coming up called Prim.
Yeah,
It's a very sort of Burton-esque
it's a good description.
art
I like it.
style.
Mm-hmm.
So not innovative per se, but they've made it all black and white, and
Mm-hmm.
they're really leaning into it with the shadows and stuff like that. And so, like, instantly, it separates itself from pretty much every other adventure game. You go, oh, you take one look at a screenshot. It's Prim. That looks good. It looks amazing. So, your unique thing could be anything,
Mm-hmm.
but there's got to be something. You can't just be generic. You can't be forgettable.
Something you want to be known for. Something
Yeah,
that
I
you
think
could put
so.
the first thing on your resume. This is my video game resume, and this is what people are going to describe as that or describe that game as.
Well, I mean, you can do that with quality too,
Mm-hmm.
but I think what you're trying to do is find that one thing that makes it distinctly yours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you know a new Tim Schafer game. Like he's
True.
probably sort of the perfect example of somebody who always has a unique vision for his games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sort of my one example here, I don't think gets enough attention is the game Stacking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, oh man, what an incredibly imaginative, innovative game. It was just so unlike anything else.
I've got to actually ask you about that game because I had never heard about that until recently. And
No.
so, like, I never heard of it. You know, somebody mentioned it to me, like, I think on my YouTube channel or something, and I looked at it, I'm like, huh, doesn't look like anything I'd play. So it must have some good gameplay to it. And so,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's like, I mean, in a way, it's a bad example because it's
mm-hmm.
so
It's so, yeah,
unique,
so unique.
so innovative. And I'm not suggesting that every developer needs to go to those lengths. Like, they just need to find the one thing, or it can be more than one thing, but at least that one thing that makes, that game, distinctly theirs.
I gotcha. Well, you know my other one because I mentioned it. I jumped out of line, and I went with ambiance.
Yep.
So, and that's just a collection of a lot of things. I don't want to be sitting still, even if I'm sitting still. I want something to be going on. I want something moving. I want something to be, some voice or something to be going in the background. I love when developers really put time into sound effects. And if you have a sound effect that holds hands, that marries itself to like the score or the music, like you have something that goes on in the background, then the music goes off. And that is what would keep someone continually playing. Someone like myself, who I've got attention deficit disorder. I want something that's going to keep me entertained and keep me excited. A game that I think of that comes to mind is like Leisure Suit Larry 7. That gave you everything. Now, the game in itself is not that great, but that constantly had some movement. You had something going on in the PA. You had little mini games. Something in every screen that you can find, and constant commotion to the point where it's not distracting, but it's entertaining. Each screen has something that's entertaining. That's kind of why I liked the game. We mentioned this a couple weeks ago or last week or something. I love like Zelda because every screen there's something that you can do. It's not the same thing all over again. So that's a big one for me. Is the ambiance.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this kind of goes back to what we were saying about the adventure genre is all indies now,
Yeah,
which is this is the one area where I think we really get shortchanged by
very
the
much
sort of
so.
much smaller budgets nowadays because animation is time consuming and expensive to do. Sound effects are difficult to do. Music is difficult to not to compose necessarily, but to integrate properly. So, yeah, I mean, those are the sorts of things where I think we've kind of taken a step back, and we tend to
Mm-hmm.
get more static games, or I've written many a review where I kind of have to call out the one animation on a screen, as something noteworthy, like,
Right.
oh, there's a little cloud rolling by. At least there's something, there's rarely that kind of, you know, busy background ambiance, as you're saying. So it's too bad because it does add so much to a game. Now, I would have thought that Beyond a Steel Sky would have met your, wishes in that regard.
Oh, definitely in that regard.
Yeah.
Actually, Beyond the Still Sky kind of gives you several different things. What you had mentioned the last round. It had something that stood out. It had a puzzle that was pretty unique to itself. They kind of overdid it, but yeah, Beyond the Still Sky has a lot of great aspects to it.
Yeah,
But the story
right.
didn't work for me. So
Yeah, it didn't hook you early enough, and
or
you
at
know.
all throughout the entire game.
Oh, at all.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And at the end I was just angry.
Oh, okay.
I'm
All
not going
right.
to spoil it.
I see you sliding in this overrated game into the conversation a week after the fact.
Oh,
No.
I don't even know if it was highly rated. You know, I think that was more anticipated than highly rated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was sort of universally praised, but I
Mhm.
think it was generally well received. So, but yeah, I
If you
can't.
get one
I
of those games, and you and I were kind of talking about this right before we got started, if you get one of those huge IPs that's universally loved, you might have people that are going to like it no matter what. And so,
true, true, true. Yeah. Well, so ambience kind of slides nicely into my next one,
mhm.
which is an interesting setting. You kind of touched
Mhm.
on it earlier with Broken Sword,
Well,
I
you're lucky
believe.
you stopped me, man, because I was just gonna ride all over all your points apparently.
Yeah, like a game, you're going to be spending hours and
Mhm.
hours and hours playing a game. It's got to be set in a place that interests you.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be exotic. It doesn't have to be a tropical island or something like that. It could be the most scuzzy, rat infested scum hole on the earth, but then lean into that. Make that interesting.
Right.
I played too many games that are sort of advertised as, travel to Prague and Rome and London. And I'm going, all right. And then I get playing and it's all like living rooms and warehouses and stuff like that. I'm going, what, what's the point of traveling around the world if you don't get to look at anything interesting?
Sure.
You don't see different clothing, like, come on, like, again, grasp the uniqueness of your locations and really lean into them, because man, a game that takes you to interesting place. And again, I'm making it sound like it should be someplace exotic. It doesn't need to be. It could be a living room, but man, make it a really interesting living room with like really interesting photos or something that
Mhm.
grabs you, like just anything. Make the location an interesting place to look at and to be. There should be enough interactivity to make you feel like, not like you're there, but sort of. It's escapist entertainment. You should feel like
That's
you're
it.
escaping the drudgery of your own life and getting to go other places. So
That
the
I
other thing
believe that's
too,
it in
like,
a nutshell.
oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, that's it in a nutshell. Well, like the escapist entertainment. Why do we read a book? Why do we watch a movie? Because we don't want to be helping our kids do math projects all day. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? We want to do something that's different. And so, like what
yeah, and like, for developers, like, don't waste your location.
mhm.
Build your world through the visual details too. um it doesn't all have to be conveyed through dialogue and story. If you're in an interesting place that has its own, it should feel lived in.
Mhm.
Any place that you go in an adventure game should feel like it exists outside of your presence. Not just that it exists for you to solve a puzzle, but oh, I've come into this interesting place, and well, there's so much I need to learn now and so much going on, and wow, this is an interesting place to explore. I can't wait to get started.
I agree. Very, very much so. In fact, that's hugely important for me. I think locations in a game are something that I need. I need an adventure in my
Yeah,
adventure game.
yeah,
Um,
there's not enough adventure in too many adventure games.
well, and I feel like we've kind of gone to a point to where to be different, you kind of have to dumb it down a little bit now. You can't have these exotic locations because that's been done by all the greats. You don't want to say, "Oh,
Yeah,
that's a Broken Sword clone," or "That's a Monkey Island clone." Well, there was nothing wrong with those. That's a
no,
great. Those were great games. Like you want something that is exotic locations. Indiana Jones, those Indiana Jones games, what do we love Indiana Jones for? Because it's an adventure. You're going to
Yeah.
all these incredible places. That's why we read the books. That's why we watch the movies, and that's why we will play Fate of Atlantis or Last Crusade.
Yeah.
Great locations. So, what's your favorite that you could think off the top of your head? It doesn't have to be favorite, but we'll give a good example of. I probably stole Indiana Jones from you.
A favorite like location
Yeah, like a,
or
a game that gives you some nice locations that captivated you.
like let's say we talked Tim Schafer earlier. How about Rubicava from Grim Fandango? I mean,
Oh
what an
yes,
amazing location, right?
oh yes. Boy, I tell you what, that had a little bit of everything that we've mentioned so far: story,
Yeah, absolutely.
location, ambiance.
Yeah.
I, I don't want to go any further because I don't want to step on anybody else.
Yeah.
So, and
We'll
by
probably be
everybody
getting
else,
to
it
a
means
few
you.
others that
My next thing that I'm gonna talk about is interaction. I love interaction, and again, this is one of the things that as we go to less cash to develop games, there's less interaction. But some of the great games that I've always loved, one of my favorite games of all time is Sherlock Holmes in the case of the serrated scalpel. You can interact with everything, darn near everything. You could talk with everyone. You were truly investigating. I mean, it feels like you were dissecting things with the you were investigating everything, and that's what made the game very difficult, but
yeah,
also is what made it engaging. I,
absolutely.
I want to talk with everyone. I want to look at everything. I want to have multiple options of things that I can do with this item. And that is something that's really, really important to me. When I had stopped being having the love of adventure games is when it started going away from that. And I feel like there's some games that kind of helped me come back to my love. And I've mentioned this several different times that I think Pendulo Studios, is that how you say it?
Yeah, Pendulo.
Pendulo Studios, with the Runaway series. There was so much interaction. There's so many things that you can work with, and that rekindled my love of the adventure game genre. That's
Yeah.
that's an example for me, more modern example. So
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I don't I guess if you're going to do voiceovers for everything, then interaction is kind of costly, but I think it's something that can be done relatively inexpensively if, you just sort of have more, subtitles or whatever for interactions. Yeah, I definitely think we've swung too far away from sort of the only thing you can interact with is something, you're going to need for a puzzle kind of thing
mm-hmm.
or something essential. Yeah.
yeah,
But there's just like so much you can do to again to world build through more interaction. So we're missing that.
and I just played a game. I'm not going to say which game it was though, but there was so little to work with. And it was, I think, the best way that you could describe that game is charming. You have like 3 or 4 items on you at all times, and there's maybe 3 things on every screen that you can do. If
Yeah,
you don't have more options to work with, like this isn't there's not going to be a puzzle here. I know
that's right.
exactly
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah,
going to be doing the whole time. It might as well be
yeah.
a,
That's
a
right.
walking simulator.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Put some meat on the bones.
Right, right. So
Yeah, you and I got to dig deeper into this particular issue too, because yeah, games have kind of gone too far into this. I don't like the phrase dumbing down, but
it's what it
um,
is. It's
yeah, kind of, or it's certainly like a streamlining to the point of we're just losing something essential now.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, we got to come back to that. So speaking of interaction,
Mm-hmm.
this kind of ties in with my next one, which is memorable lead character.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, memorable entire cast, but I will settle for a memorable lead
Mm-hmm.
character. Um, it can't just be some generic schmo that you don't ever sort of really get to know over the course of game. There doesn't need to be any character development necessarily. There doesn't need to be a whole character growth arc over the course of the game, but there's got to be some depth. You have
Mm.
to have a real sense of who this person is at some point during the game, because you have to care about their fate. It's not just enough to be the one in
Yeah.
control. You need to be invested in what happens to them too.
You want
And
to
I just
want to
don't
see
think there
them
are enough
succeed.
sort of really memorable protagonists.
Yeah, I cut you off a little bit there. I was kind of saying that you want to see that your character will succeed. You have to like
Yeah.
your character. You can't resent him throughout the game too. Like
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like, I think you can do an anti-hero, but it's really, really hard to do properly. But I would rather have an anti-hero that I, for some reason, really dislike than have just a nobody that I could care less about.
mm-hmm.
That I don't feel I know any better at the end of the game than when I started. And I think, like, you know, uh, the temptation is to just, if you're going to develop a character, do it all through dialogue. Have a big, info dump of exposition where you just learn all about their
Right.
backstories. No, 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 no. It should be very much a show, don't tell kind of thing. And you can do that through all these little interactions. Um,
Personality.
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, developers should never waste an opportunity to find a way to bring out part of um, a character's personality, and you can do that with every single hotspot on a screen. I mean, I've played game where I just click on a chair and literally all they say is an old chair, and I'm going,
Mm-hmm.
what was the point? What was the point of that? That bit of dialogue. You could have said anything to bring out just a little bit more personality.
And that's one of the things that I I was going to say when it comes to ambiance, but that I didn't feel it actually set right there. Um, Something to where if you're interacting with an old chair, you can make it funny. You know what
Yes.
I mean? It's something that's going to keep, even though you're not moving around, you're saying something, that I'm going to want to click on things
Yeah.
because it's entertaining. And I'm going to go
Yes.
back again. I'm going to go back again and say Broken Sword nailed it. Although a lot of people have complaints against the main character, George Stobart, but everything that he touches, everything he talks to, like he has an observation and it's something clever, and I'm learning something about that item or that thing that you're talking about. It has a clever way.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Here's my example for this one.
Mhm.
Tex Murphy.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
how do you not love Tex
Yeah.
Murphy? I mean, the guy's amazing. I couldn't even tell you what the stories are about anymore. I've been, not to say they're bad, but I just don't
The
recall
stories have
details.
never been good.
But I
It's the
know that Tex Murphy is
personalities.
awesome.
Yeah, like the stories. It's hard to make a good story, but that character and the characters that go along with them were all great, and they worked. They
Absolutely.
blended
Yeah. Yeah.
well.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
you wanted to do the next interaction just to hear another comment from Tex. So I mean,
I'm going to go the
not
opposite way
everyone
here and
has the
ask you.
benefit of like being perfect for their own roles like Chris Jones is, but you can still write a good character.
Hard to imagine Chris Jones is actually the developer. Like it's so
Yeah, I
crazy.
know.
It's like
Yeah,
he
he
wrote.
just is Tex.
It's
It'd
like
be
he
a
knew what he was.
yeah,
So let
yeah.
me go the other way here. What is a character? If I don't want to put you on the spot, I have one. If you don't want to answer this, but that you truly did not like.
Oh, didn't like?
Mm-hmm.
Ew. There probably are some, but yeah. Well, let's hear yours, and I'll chew on it for a minute and see if I can come up with
Mine's Tony Tuff.
one. Oh yeah.
It was because everything that he said. Well, obviously the voice to me was just it was grating, but everything he said was whiny, and that's the way I said it. I did not like the character. I did not want him to succeed. I didn't want to hear him talk. And the things that
That's
he
the
said and
problem.
the way he said it was like, this is a chore. So yeah, that's important. So I think.
Yeah, well, I'm just gonna basically copy yours now
Mhm.
because you just immediately put it in my mind. But Alamo from Alamo and the Lost Dutchman's Mine, I think I've got that exact same thing. Just
Exact same thing.
a really whiny voice, and he's just like, "No, please don't ever talk again." Every time he opened his mouth. So
That was kind of the beginning of an era where the indie devs were starting to take control of the scene back then, and I wanted to like that game, but I don't think I played more than 30 minutes of it for the exact same reason.
yeah,
And
I
it's
think this
hard for me
one,
not to play a game. If I start something, I have to finish it. And so,
yeah.
yeah.
Now we're kind of getting that's more of a voice acting issue, and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't on my list because like I know it's another budget issue for a lot of developers, but if you're going to have voice acting,
Mm-hmm.
find the right actors. Don't cheap out and
Mm-hmm.
have bad ones. Better to just do subtitles than bad voiceovers, I think.
Well, and we don't have a lot of time left, but I figured this, I'll do a quick one that kind of goes hand in hand with that. Is you want to have a realistic dialogue. You
Yeah.
don't want to have a game that is too much dialogue. You don't want, like you said, a data dump. And every time that they're saying something, you want quick hitting lines, something that, like, okay, this is a real conversation. Like Tony Tuff, the that you mentioned how Al Emma was it, or is that how
Oh yeah.
the dialogue in that wasn't good either. They're trying to make that person that whiny character. So I mean, it's good for what they were going for, but wasn't good for me. That type of
Right. Yeah.
thing. Good dialogue is so important.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And that's not dependent on budget.
oh, of course not. In fact,
Oh
that can make a good story
yeah.
in the way that you talk, in the way that you interact with other people. Do you have another quick one to throw out there?
You mind if I take two? Really quick.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. One is user friendliness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, my motto here is if a developer doesn't value my time, then I'm not going to value theirs by playing their game. Make the interface intuitive, you know, have manual saves, have quick travel maps, have anything to make the experience less frustrating for the player. And I know that may kind of go against what some of them are going for in their games, but again, if you frustrate the player, like that can't be your goal.
Right.
So,
You don't
to
want to
me, that,
irritate the player in exchange for making your game longer.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So,
Mm-hmm.
and the other thing, this kind of cheating a little bit. It's not something in a game, it's something outside a game,
Mm-hmm.
which is do enough testing. There's two kinds of testing. There's beta testing, which adventure gamers do pretty well to stamp out bugs and stuff.
Mm,
The one thing they don't do well, I think, is play testing. And that's just to have enough people play your game to get a proper sense of where your bottlenecks are, where your weaknesses are showing, where people are getting bored, where you know what I mean? Like I don't think there's enough of that. And the games that do a lot of play testing are the ones that feel really polished and really refined. Like the gameplay experience feels like just right. You're going for that just right um, sweet spot between too hard, too easy, that kind of thing. So do play testing, and you'll get there, at least more often than not.
again, money and time. I if that's the time that I mean, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. That's
Yeah,
about the time in the development of a game to where I've done all this major work. I try to put myself as an artist in their shoes. Like, okay, now I'm just almost like I want to cut corners now and just get this thing out there. I don't
yeah,
want to do all the little polished stuff. I don't want to do all the little necessary things to make the game go from okay, this is good concept to a good game. And I can, as an indie developer, I can totally see where that would be an easy mistake to make.
yeah.
I'll
Well,
just
I
throw.
think there's. Go ahead.
I was just gonna throw a quick one out there again, but if you go ahead and say what you were
No,
gonna
I
say
was
real
just
quick.
going to say, like, I think there's also a tendency to sort of rely on an inner circle of people that are sort of too readily willing to say, no, it's really good, it's perfect as is, kind of thing. And you need people that will tell you honestly. You will need, you know what, I really had a hard time with this puzzle, and this bit felt broken to me, and I didn't care about that character at all. Get enough of those, sort of competing, balancing opinions, and you'll have a better sense of where your game is actually at before you release it.
That's where a publisher would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Real quickly, I like games, and obviously this isn't something that you have to have, but for me personally, I like a non-linear game. I don't want to be told exactly where to go and when to go. I'd like to have little, if at all possible, little side quests that I can do that are outside of what you have to do in the game, but still makes me feel like, once again, I'm still doing something while I'm lost. Like multiple endings, that type of stuff. So, just I like to have my actions mean something, every action that means something, and have a non-linear development of a story arc. And
Yeah.
so, well, it's almost done here, and as always, we finish it up by giving five things that we like, five things that we don't like. This time we're going to do five things that are common in an adventure game. Inventory items. Inventory items that are in an adventure game. To me, these are super simple, and I feel like we'll probably just step on each other. But I'm going to let you go first.
I wrote enough that I make up for your stepping up.
I'm
Yeah.
going off this right here. All right.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I gotta go with rope. I mean,
Yeah.
any game will give you a rope, yeah, because you're gonna need it at some point.
A rope. I'm going to go with the crowbar.
Yeah, that
The
was second on my list.
universal tool in an adventure game. The
Yeah.
crowbar.
Before I even go on, the funny thing about these lists is that the only thing you can be sure of in an adventure game is that you won't have this particular item in the exact situation you need it in. But
Well, because that's part of this. That's part of the puzzle.
that is part of the puzzle, exactly.
Mhm.
So a stick,
Okay.
you're gonna have a long stick at some point.
You have to move the snake out of the way, or that's in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
that's in
Or
the poisonous snake. That's in the way.
makeshift fishing pole or something like that. You're gonna need a stick at some point.
I'm gonna go with a shape shifting companion, shape shifting
Oh, okay.
sidekick.
Yeah, yeah, those are fun. I like
Yeah,
those.
you get something that helps you get through a puzzle, whether it be like
Yeah.
towards passage, whether it be like a Joey type of situation, and yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep. You're gonna need some kind of light at some point, so I'll go with either flashlight or some matches.
Okay, okay. Gum,
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
gum, and now gum is probably the most used thing in LucasArts games. I couldn't think of any game, any Sierra game that had gum, but almost everything except for the obvious ones that wouldn't have gum in LucasArts had some gum puzzle in there.
Fun to chew and a great adhesive, so it makes sense as an inventory.
That's right. That's right. And oftentimes you don't even use them in some of these games. I shouldn't say oftentimes, but in some of the games you don't even use that piece of inventory.
Yeah. No, I'd love to see a character actually blowing bubbles with their gum. That would make it really good, but
Oh,
I'm
I
not sure
probably
if I've
just
ever
like that
seen that.
character then.
That'd be okay.
I think that's
Along the
four.
lines of a stick is a rock. You're gonna need some kind of stone or rock or pebble or something at some point along the line. Probably as a distraction, but maybe to smash something in. Who knows?
A lump of coal, something like that. Yeah. Oh, this last one is, gosh, there's so many that I'm going to think of, but especially in modern style games, they all have like some sort of cell phone, some sort of electronic device, PDA or something. And a lot of those have very unique puzzles involved with them too, because there's so many different puzzles that you can interact with a PDA or a cell phone or electronic device. And so
I don't know if we're reaching the end
this is
here. I
six.
think
This
my
is going to be
last
your
one is going to
sixth.
be money,
Okay.
which ironically sort of exists only to remind you that you don't ever have enough of it.
Zach
You know,
McCracken.
I've got 2 coins, but I need 5. So now I know what else to do. You never start with a full wallet of money and go, man, I'm gonna buy everything I need at the market. No,
That would
No,
be too easy, man.
it would way too easy.
That would be way too easy.
Yeah,
Well, if we're going with 6, then I'm gonna go with food. There's
Okay.
some foods that these are the best, by the way. That you decide, okay, I'm gonna eat this. And by best, I probably mean like the frustrating things. You'll be holding on to this food the entire game, and you never use it,
Yeah.
or you use it and you ate it and you shouldn't have eaten it. Like you need you needed that food. No, King's Quest 5.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh man. So Jack, what do you got going on this week over at the hotspot that you're working on?
Well, we got some great new reviews coming out, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Tomorrow we're going to have the excavation of Hobbs Barrow.
Choo choo.
And next week, geez, so many reviews I've been editing and, you know, prepping for future. I kind of forget what's coming. Let's see. Oh yeah, Monday will probably be Crowns and Pawns,
Mm-hmm.
which you and I have talked about several times. Very broken swordish, but set in Lithuania. We're gonna have an interview with the developers of a really charming looking dinosaur themed game called Zid Journey. So that's
Huh.
going to be a lot of fun, which is currently on Kickstarter. So you can run over there and check it out anytime. And probably a review of Lucy Dreaming.
Gotcha.
I probably didn't mention the one that you and a bunch of other people wanted to hear, which is Return to Monkey Island. It is coming, but unfortunately, such is life with volunteer staff sometimes that life has its own plans that disrupt your own best laid plans. So we had a bit of a setback there, but it's coming. It is coming as soon as we can get it done.
You hear that, devs? Jack is the one that's in charge of this stuff. So if you want to know when a game is coming, you go talk to Jack. Or when a review or something, you talk to Jack. He handles
in
this
charge, like one is in charge of herding cats, kind of thing. But yeah, I guess in that sense, I am.
I get emails. I'm like, I do not know the day to day when it comes to this stuff. Jack is the wizard. So
Pretty fluid
talk to
even for
Jack.
me. So
Well, this was another fun adventure, another podcast that Jack and I have been on Adventure Game Hotspot. Wherever you're listening to this, if you're listening to it on a podcast, make sure that you give it 5 stars and share it, because that really helps the algorithms. Also, if you're watching it on YouTube, I hope you are, because we now have our own YouTube channel for the hotspot. It is Adventure Game Hotspot. That's where you'll find it over on YouTube. That's where these podcasts will be found if you want to actually watch them. We have a bunch of stuff on there already, 16 videos, and it's starting to climb. So go over to YouTube. I'm going to put the link in this description so that you can join. And make sure, of course, you go to Adventure Game Hotspot website for daily content and just a really cool place to hang out, because it's the hotspot.
That's right.
Anything you want to say on the way out, Jack?
I don't know what more could be said. Just, yeah, no, everything you said, I agree with. I really hope people enjoy the site and visit daily, because that is our goal, to have something, some kind of new content for you every single day of the week, including weekends. So I don't take a day off, so neither does the site.
Oh, wow. I feel bad now because I take lots of days off.
Yeah, he does. I can attest.
Different roles. All right, folks. Well, we appreciate you. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful day. Take care.
Yeah.